Hey, welcome to EPN. My name is Victor Lucas, and we bring you the latest in everything cool every single day, and we've got an amazing show for you lined up. Josh Swee, who has got a great deal of information about the history of Midway Games, is going to join me right after the rundown. I've got a live review of the Justice League 4K for you, which I watched this morning. We've got an awesome reviews on the run for you and a buried treasure, all kinds of really enjoyable stuff. But let's get started with your rundown, and today I'm dedicating it to the late and very great Stephen Hawking, who, you want to talk about superheroes, this guy fought to educate the world and fought for science. He was a wonderful icon out there in our world, and he will be greatly missed and never forgotten. Let's get started with Stephen Hawking's rundown. Monster Hunter World is about to get a whole lot bigger. Capcom has announced that the first big expansion for the game will launch on March 22nd. It's known as the Deviljho DLC, and as the title implies, will give players new quests where they can hunt the classic Monster Hunter adversary, Deviljho. Although there have been several smaller updates like new characters and gear, this will be the biggest yet and is just the first of many big updates and in-game events that Capcom has on the way. Best of all, the Deviljho update is free for all players. This is Capcom sort of, taking over the world with Monster Hunter World, and this is amazing. And it's just getting bigger and bigger, and people are still playing it. I saw our buddy Greg Miller, he's been playing this for weeks now, and he's basically camping out on the weekends and sharing screens with pals and continuing on. This is an incredible game. I wish I had more time to play Monster Hunter World, but congratulations to Capcom and everybody that's playing this game because you're getting a lot more cool stuff. Speaking of cool stuff, Sega is bringing some of the most iconic games, their most iconic games, to new systems, but not all the new systems. The publisher has announced that the Sega Genesis Collection, featuring more than 50 retro Genesis games, including Sonic the Hedgehog, Echo the Dolphin, Golden Axe, Shining Force, and more. And unfortunately, the collection hasn't been announced yet for the Nintendo Switch, but hopefully it will find its way there soon. That's the system I want to play it on. I'm sure you want to play it on. I know Blake wants to play it on the Nintendo Switch. It's great that it's coming to the PS4 and Xbox One as well, but it'd just be great to be able to, carry it around and play these games anywhere that you want to. The Sega Genesis Collection hits the PS4, Xbox One on May 29th, and it's also going to be available on Steam. I think there's stuff already available on Steam, but they're going to flip the switch to make everything that's available on PS4 and Xbox One at par on Steam as well. It's worth pointing out, though, that outside of North America, the Sega Genesis Collection will be called the Sega Mega Drive Collection, because that's what the original console was called everywhere else in the world. I think the game, if I've got to pick one that I'm looking forward to playing the most, out of this Sega Genesis Collection, is Gunstar Heroes. Incredible game from Treasure. I'm also really, really excited to play the Streets of Rage series again. I've been jonesing to play those games. Now, over in the TV land, the maker of the cerebral new science fiction movie Annihilation, which I hope you've all seen, is heading to television. Alex Garland, who wrote and directed Annihilation along with the 2015 movie Ex Machina, which is also incredible, is working on a TV series with FX. It's called Devs, and like his previous work, will explore the darker aspects of science and technology, focusing on a young software developer who discovers that the company she works for is secretly up to no good. Garland's Annihilation received rave reviews, including from yours truly, but failed financially, so hopefully his new show will have better luck. FX hasn't given it a pilot order. FX has given it a pilot order, but we'll have to wait and see if it gets picked up for a full series. This guy is incredible. He's, creating some of the most indelible science fiction out there. It's stuff that he creates, and it takes a little while because they're, independent. They're a little bit smaller. They don't get the full studio support that some of these big blockbusters get. And so people find them and they discover what a talent he is, and then they talk about it. So I feel like Annihilation will make more than its money back and will become one of these, cult classics that people point to. It's a tremendous movie. And I think he's going to have a lot of success with FX, who isn't afraid to experiment a little bit, and will give him all of the, sort of the maturity kind of freedom that he wants to, the mature freedom that he wants to. I'm sure it'll have lots of violence and sexuality and explore all kinds of cool themes, because that's, kind of a hallmark of his previous work. Looking forward to that. Now, back in the video game land, Google and Ubisoft are joining forces to make online gaming a whole lot smoother. The two companies are working on an open source game server system called Gones. The idea is that any game developer will be able to use the service to easily create their own dedicated servers to run online games like shooters, MMOs, and MOBAs, rather than building those dedicated servers from the ground up, which can be very costly and time-consuming. Having dedicated servers can make or break an online game's success, absolutely. So hopefully this will make things a lot better for games and for gamers. Keep your eyes on Google. They are encroaching on the game space, and they are taking things very, very seriously, and this is probably the start of many announcements. I wouldn't be surprised if we see something cool at E3. Speaking of which, I just found out today that Microsoft has taken over the LA live space for their announcement at E3 this year, their sort of press announcement thing, which says to me, that's a very visible space in downtown LA right next to the convention center, and that says to me that they've got a lot of ammunition, and they're going to come out with some really big news, so I'm excited about that. Now, it looks like game maker Bethesda Softworks has put aside their bad blood with VR company Oculus. Bethesda has announced that the virtual reality version of Skyrim, first released on the PlayStation VR last year, will finally hit the PC on April 3rd. It will be available on the HTC Vive, Windows mixed reality headsets, and also the Oculus Rift, making it the first Bethesda VR game available on that headset. Bethesda famously sued Oculus for intellectual property theft, claiming that they stole their software, and Bethesda won more than $500 million when the lawsuit ended last year. With Skyrim hitting the Oculus Rift, it seems as though both parties are willing to move on. Bethesda plans to create more VR titles going forward. This is huge. Skyrim on PlayStation VR is one of the best examples of why you would want VR in the first place. It's an enormous property with tremendous freedom, giving you, access to a rich world, and it's so compelling to play. It's really hard to not play that game, whether you play it on the Switch, any of the other consoles, and when you get lost in VR, it's like, oh my God, it's incredible. The only thing holding it back on the PlayStation VR is, of course, it didn't have all of the resolution technology that's in both the Vive and the Rift. So I am absolutely going to check it out again, and I'll give you my thoughts when it hits on April 3rd, if not before, but I'm excited as hell. This is big news. It's great to see that the VR support, I mean, clearly a lot of the sort of launch hype has faded a little bit, and now it's like, okay, show me what you got, I was stoked about Moss, and I think I mentioned it, but if I didn't, when I played Moss and reviewed it, you guys know I had the developers on here. If you haven't checked out my interview with those guys, you should. But when I played that game, that was a big launch title for the PlayStation VR. And what it made me do after I beat it was explore some of the other VR titles that I haven't gone back to in a little while. And I played the Eve Valkyrie spaceship flying game again, and it's incredible. They've updated that like crazy, and I appreciated it again. I played a little Gran Turismo in VR, and it was really compelling. Very, very solid. So it's titles like this and announcements like this that will keep people engaged and coming back to VR. We need huge titles like Skyrim. Clearly, we're not going to be, going into brand new titles at that scale in VR anytime soon with that much content being built, because it just would be so prohibitively expensive for the install base just not being there. But it's a great move for VR. Very, very cool stuff.